That's why there I saw. I was there.
Commerce and Labor Subcommittee.
This tripod was so cheap that as I was setting it up, the handle fell off. But it's fun. I think that the iPhone was like, and I was like, is that much? She was like, you just got one shot. I was like, this is so good. Well, I mean, she was like, she was like actually upset. I guess
didn't subboard? It was signed to subboard? Okay.
Maybe I ain't got that far.
Yeah. He is,
She's out of the office upstairs, right? This is already a plus.
I
came back like after. I came back like
session today.
because you can be relaxed.
Right after.
I'm being a good boy.
When I started this job, I was like, oh, I can just like at home, and then like I would get home and I would like immediately
Really? I am, the thing is that by the end of the year, like I was out of it, right? Not acceptable, so I was trying to make it better. But it's growing up.
things don't all
Thank
transfer
you
over
today.
because it's a different state, different accreditation process. But yeah, you're never behind.
No, I've been from there, but Alex went 35
Members, please take your seats. Folks in the audience. I want to call our second subcommittee meeting in less than 24 hours to order. Thank you all for what you did last night. I think we have 9 bills on the docket. Do we have any others, Becky, that have not been referred, or is this? Any bill that goes by today, we probably have time to hear at one more meeting of the subcommittee. And having said that, Delegate Helsel has requested the 1956 go by for the day today. That's Delegate Marshall's please. Okay, so we will definitely have another meeting for this subcommittee. All right. We have Delegate LaRock and Delegate Boysko both have bills today. All right, then let's move on. You want to do yours and wait till Dave comes? All right.
And
All right.
just to confirm, we have identical legislation, so
All right, welcome.
thank you so much. Mr. Chairman and members of the committee, today I have an amendment in the nature of a substitute for HB 1449. This bill would allow a person who is authorized by the Department of Behavioral Health and Department of Developmental Services to train individuals on the administration of naloxone for use in opioid overdose reversal to dispense naloxone to a person who has completed a training program approved by the department. These Revive trainers will be able to send trained individuals out into the community with doses of naloxone prepared to save lives. I was asked to carry this bill by Jenny Atwood Lovett with the Chris Atwood Foundation, who has been affected personally by the opioid crisis right in my community. Jenny is here with us today to speak in support of this bill. Many people are attending the Revive training classes to learn how to identify signs of an overdose and how to administer naloxone, but they're not following up by going to the pharmacy to receive the drug. We know that the people who are most likely to overdose are least likely to get to a pharmacy to get the help. HB 1449 would allow qualified trainers to receive, store, and distribute the naloxone kits that are vital for the survival of not only those addicted to the opioids, but first-time users as well. This common-sense approach has support from a broad bipartisan group. I've been working with state agencies along with Senate colleague Wexton all year long on this initiative, and thanks to the current standing order, a prescription from a medical doctor is not currently required to obtain naloxone. This bill takes it one step further to get the life-saving drug out into the community, and it's a practical step towards saving lives. I look forward to seeing this bill pass along with the other legislative efforts to address the opioid crisis so that we can help people get onto the road to recovery. And I hope it's the pleasure of the subcommittee to report HB 1449 to the full committee. Thank you so much.
Thank you very much. And while you're, if you have someone you wish to testify, let them come on up. But
Okay.
committee, there are 2 identical bills. Delegate LaRock has 1453. The substitutes are identical. So the substitute you've been handed out is a reflection of both those patrons. So why don't you go ahead, and I know this young lady, welcome.
Hi, thank you everyone for letting us come here. And in the interest of your time, I will be brief. My name is Jenny Atwood Lovett. Delegate Boysko mentioned that we asked for this bill, and the reason for that is we started the Chris Atwood Foundation in memory of my little brother Christopher, who passed away from a heroin overdose in 2013. And unfortunately, I was the one who came home and found him the day that he overdosed, and I didn't have naloxone. It was not easy to acquire at that time, and I called 911. They walked me through the steps for how to try to do CPR and revive him. Nothing worked because the only thing that to reverse an opioid overdose is naloxone, and I didn't have it. And so that's why it's my personal passion to make sure that everybody who could possibly need it can have it, because opioid overdose is very easily reversed. Nobody needs to die from this completely preventable cause of death. And for anyone who's not familiar with what it looks like, this is one of the nasal sprays. So it looks just like nasal chrome. It works just like nasal chrome. Simply sprayed up their nose. So it's really, really user-friendly. And we were just training lots of people in the use of it. And as Delegate Boysko said, they just weren't going to the pharmacy to get it. I'm a state certified naloxone instructor. We go and we do the trainings. They're an hour long. They're very thorough trainings. Everybody learns exactly how to recognize an overdose and how to reverse it. But unfortunately right now, people have the knowledge, but they don't have the tool. And we need to get them the tool, or we're going to keep losing thousands of lives in Virginia. So, thank you.
All right, now please be brief. Welcome.
Hey, I'm Jake Slauson, and I'm a recovering addict. I'm also a UVA student, and in October of 2016, I overdosed on legal opiates that I was able to buy off of Amazon.com. I was unconscious in my dorm room for 12 hours before anyone found me. Thankfully, EMS arrived and took me to the hospital, and I'm extremely grateful to be alive thanks to naloxone being administered and bringing me back to life. But most people aren't as lucky as me, so I'd really like to see this bill be passed and people's lives be spared. Thank you.
Briefly, my name is Dr. Tricia Smith. I have a PhD in pharmacology, and I've done my postdoctoral work on opioids here at the Medical College of Virginia. And I'm just here to briefly say that these drugs are extraordinarily safe. They can be used in the general population. The adult and pediatric doses are identical. So this Revive can be used in children if they were to accidentally ingest these drugs. There's no risk to the general population as they have little effects. And there is a fairly strong sort of consequence to administering this reversal. So the drug only lasts 2 hours. So once the naloxone has been in the system 2 hours, the people who are overdosing do need to be in an emergency room or they will relapse into fatal overdose. So this is not a free pass for people who are using. They will experience precipitated withdrawal, which is very unpleasant and completely reverses their high and makes them very ill. They also must be immediately taken to a medical facility to prevent their death in 2 hours. So it does have a lot of consequences for users. Does anybody have any questions?
Any committee members have any questions? Go ahead.
Yeah, Mr. Chairman, first of all, I very much appreciate what you're trying to do here, because we got a mess and we've got to do everything we can to try to fix this, and it's unlike anything we've ever experienced. But just for educational purposes for me, what happens if this is out there that readily available? What happens if somebody is administered naloxone that isn't experiencing a high?
That's a wonderful question. So this drug is an antagonist of the opioid receptors, so it will block anything binding to those receptors. So the only people who will really be affected by the drug are people who are actively taking the opioids, so it would block that effect, or someone who is addicted to these substances. So they have down-regulated receptors, and if they were to take this drug, they would instantly go into a very severe precipitated withdrawal. So you would expect nausea, vomiting, piloerection, pain, and fear. In a normal person, however, this is just going to block those opioid receptors and would just block your endorphin function. So for a couple hours, whenever you did anything that would make you, activate those endorphins, like if somebody gave you a chocolate cake, you would normally feel very happy after eating that chocolate cake. Naloxone would reverse that. You would eat the chocolate cake and you'd be like, oh. And that would be and that's it. That's all we would expect.
Mr. Chairman, just for the benefit of the committee, piloerection means the hairs on your arms are standing up, just in case. To know what piloerection is. Just in case. Thank you, Mr. Chairman.
It's goosebumps.
Yes.
Yeah, it's going cold turkey.
All right.
They also ride.
Thank you, ma'am. Anybody else have any questions? The committee have any questions? Anybody else from the public? Delegate Garrett.
So I guess, just to be clear, maybe ask somebody from pharmacy so we don't get the doctor's answer. Delegate Head's question is a very serious question. If I were to administer to Delegate Head a dose of naloxone right now, what would happen to him? Because without Dr. Is there somebody from pharmacy here? Caroline here? I don't see anyone. So go ahead. What would happen if you gave somebody that's just Delegate Head right now, so here's Caroline. What would happen? That's really the bottom line question, because it's a controlled substance, it's scheduled, it's a chemical that needs a prescription, doctors prescribe it. The comfort level that I think legislators need and the public needs is it dangerous or not if you misprescribed it or mistreated somebody?
Good morning, Caroline Jarrett, Executive Director of the Virginia Board of Pharmacy, and no, I am not aware of any ill effects of administering this particular drug to someone who did not actually have opioids on board.
Thank you.
All right. Anybody else have any questions? Okay, I think Delegate LaRock is here. Dave, you want to add anything to this? Your bill is identical, and we have absent objection to adopt the substitute. Okay. All right.
Not knowing what has been.
We've had really good testimony. You've had great presentations in support of this. I'll just say one thing is, I think I was the patron like 2 or 3 years ago of the Revive program, which was the very first opportunity to get started on this. I think this is a really worthwhile thing to do, and I support it enough. Kind of listen to some of the back and forth, but I think this is the right place to be. So,
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. I won't slow things down by the adding my thing.
okay. All right. So, committee?
Report. Second.
Which bill?
House Bill 1453.
So they're identical. We cannot report identical bills, but we can have chief co-patrons, and everybody is on board. That's acceptable. So a proper motion might be to report 1453 as the substitute. All in favor, raise your right hand. All opposed, by like sign. All right, and Delegate Boysko, the chief co-patron sheet, I gave the clerk, and we can all move forward together with this. So that would table, let's gently table. And all in favor of that, say aye. Okay, very good. Thank you all very much. I appreciate it. All right. Delegate Marshall. Briefly, then we'll do Delegate Pope.
Good morning. Thank you.
227.
Quickly, House Bill 2277. Ready, Mr. Chairman?
I am.
Okay, sir. What this does is creates parity in the residence length for foreign educated physician. The current law requires foreign educated physicians to complete 2 years of residency compared to a U.S. or Canadian educated physician to have no more than to complete 1 year. This bill would bring everyone to the 1 year of residency. Foreign educated physicians have to pass all the same exams as U.S. and Canadian educated physicians. The U.S. State Medical License Examination, steps 1, 2 is for clinical knowledge, and skills 3. I don't know what I'm talking about here, but I'm talking to this. But this legislation was sponsored by the Board of Medicine and the Medical Society of Virginia, who we have some white coats you can see. And then also in the back is Dr. Pandia from Danville, who happens to be the chairman of the Medical Society this year.
Okay, Dr. Andy, welcome. We appreciate you coming. Mr. Johnson.
Good morning, Mr. Chairman. Scott Johnson, General Counsel for the Medical Society. Dr. Andy and I are glad to answer any questions. We appreciate this and we support it.
All right. Committee members, y'all have any questions? We definitely need more practitioners at all levels, and so I think whatever extent this is helpful is great. Second. All right. Any more testimony? All in favor of reporting, raise your right hand. This is no substitutes to this, right? This is the bill.
Yes.
Thank you, Delegate Marshall.
Well, thank you. Thank you so much. Have a good day.
Delegate Pope.
That was quick. Thank you. Thank you, Mr. Chairman. House Bill 1533.
And members, I'm going to tell you what we provided for you is notes on this from the health department and some information from the folks that are not in favor of this. So you have one of those at each spot. All right, go ahead.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman, member of the subcommittee. This bill was brought to me by the Department of Health. The bill adds a requirement for 1 dose of meningococcal conjugate MCV4 vaccine to 6th grade school entry. Meningococcal disease is an acute and potentially severe illness leading to the cause of bacterial meningitis and sepsis in the United States. For every 100 people infected with this disease, 10 to 15 people will die with appropriate therapy. So it is rare, but it is a very serious virus. 1 out of every 5 people who survive the disease suffer permanent damage like hearing loss, loss of limbs, neurological disabilities. 10 people reported to have this disease in Virginia in 2015. 3 of these people were between the ages of 10 and 19 years old, and 1 person died, 18 years old. The national recommendations call for routine vaccination of children between 11 and 12 years of age for the MCV4 vaccine. This recommendation should not be confused with the recently FDA-approved meningococcal B vaccine. The B vaccine is routinely recommended only for individuals with a risk factor for that disease. So while the vaccine is expensive, health plans cover all routinely recommended vaccines, and federally funded vaccines for children program provides vaccines at no cost to children. The government's budget includes funds available to support the code requirement for local health departments to get the required vaccines. The monies provided in the governor's budget would be used for an upfront purchase of the vaccine. The 2015 National Immunization Survey indicates the percentage of Virginians adolescents who received at least 1 dose of this vaccine, about 66.8%, and that is lower than the national average. So we're not keeping up with the national average, and that's why we think there's a need for this requirement. School immunization requirements have been shown to be an important tool and a way to increase and maintain high vaccine coverage rates. 27 states, including North Carolina, Maryland, West Virginia, and Kentucky, require at least 1 dose. Adverse events are associated with this vaccine include fever, headache. Serious adverse effects are extremely rare. And so we have people from the health department here to testify in favor. The epidemiologist will be here to testify. The school nurses, Medical Society of Virginia, and the pediatricians are here.
Thank you very much, Dr. Hope. Let me get things teed up here. It's House Bill 1533. It's pronounced meningococcal, and it's not a virus. It's a bacteria. So what we're going to do, I think, is committee members, y'all have any questions at this point? So let's do this. Let's allow 15 minutes for each side if it requires that much time, and we'll have the folks in support of this come first, and then we'll have those folks who are not. So go right ahead. Welcome, State Epidemiologist.
Yes, good morning. My name is Dr. Laura Forlano. I serve as the State Epidemiologist for the Virginia Department of Health. I think Delegate Hope summarized the key important points of this bill. The Health Department supports this bill, and the administration also supports this bill. And I think he summarized it well. One other point I'd like to bring up is of the 24 states that are above the national average for immunization coverage rates, only 3 of those do not have a mandate. On the other side of the coin, of the 26 states that are below the national average, including Virginia, 20 of those states do not have a school immunization requirement. I think, as Delegate Hope summarized just a moment ago, that school immunization requirements are a key and important strategy to improving these rates and protecting our children. Thank you.
Thank you. Welcome, Dr. Bartle.
My name is Sam Bartle. I'm a pediatric emergency medicine physician. I'm the president of the Virginia chapter of American Academy of Pediatrics. We're in support of this bill. To give you some visual idea of what meningococcus does when you get infected, it's a very quick onset. It starts off as just kind of a simple illness, but within hours you'll start having leaking blood vessels. Your blood's not clotting. You get a rash, looks like you've been bruised and beat up all over. This bleeding causes cirrhosis of the organs. If you're able to receive therapy in time of antibiotics and being very aggressive with it, you can not only just survive it, but you hopefully will have some degree of surviving of your body parts. It's not uncommon for this to cause amputations of your fingers and legs and arms, causes gangrene. These kids have can have neurological problems from the infarcts from it. It causes, because the population that it hits, being young adolescents, you have a lifelong problem with it if you survive it. The sort of dark humor among some physicians who have seen kids with meningococcus, they call it the Ebola of the developed world. It's very, very cruel, very quick, and it's very deadly. So we stand in support of this bill.
Thank you. Anybody else?
Mr. Chairman, members of the subcommittee, thank you. Bill Ray with the Virginia Catholic Conference. We also support this bill.
Thank you.
Good morning, Mr. Chairman and members of the committee. Becky Bowers, Lanier with the Virginia Association of School Nurses. We were asked to weigh in on this when the bill was dropped, and unanimously and within a few hours, every member of our board indicated support of this bill. And so I'm here today to ask you to please vote for the bill.
Thank you. Mr. Johnson.
Yes, sir. Scott Johnson, General Counsel, Medical Society of Virginia. We support the bill.
Thank you. All right. Members have any questions? Can I ask Dr. Forlano to come back, please? So there are lots of vaccinations that can be done. And so mandating them is pretty significant. You all have a process in the health department where you evaluate all of these and then actually come up with a recommendation. You don't always recommend mandates. Is that actually correct?
That's accurate. Yes.
Okay, so this one has been through your all's process and you all think this is the right thing to do.
Yes, sir.
And I will say this has fiscal impact, and so if we vote to report this, it will need to be reported and referred to appropriations. All right, big members, any other questions? All right, those in opposition, please come forward. Welcome.
Chairman, subcommittee, I'm Steve Martin, and I'm representing National Vaccine Information Center. I am a parent, as you know. I'm a parent of two, grandfather of five. And of course, me and my family made a decision, as we well should, to make sure that our children were well immunized and protected. And I expect that my sons and their wives will make the same decision in seeing to it. We, of course, and you agree that we need to be very careful as to mandates, and only when it's most critically important. There are 4 states that I saw last evening. And the issue number 1 was that we're only at 66, I think it's 66.8% rate of vaccinations in the state of Virginia right now, 66.8. There are 4 states, Wisconsin, Colorado, Delaware, and New Hampshire. Each have no mandatory vaccine for this. It's not mandatory. But their rates are running between 81.6 and 87.7, which is solidly above the national average, and they have no mandate. So it's not the mandate, it's more about the information that one has. The reason you have 66.8 in the state of Virginia getting the vaccine is because they are made aware of the importance of it, and they are doing it, making that decision. And that's the same going on in Colorado, New Hampshire, Delaware, and Wisconsin. So I would say, number 1, that's our the most important thing, is to make sure people are aware of the need. As to the caseload that's going on, the last 3 years, 2014, there were 10 cases. 2015, there were 10 cases. And in 2016, there were 10 cases across all serotypes. Across all serotypes, across all age groups. Over those 3 years, there were 10, only 30 cases, 10, 10, and 10. Now, I'm not sure how many there were since 2010, but I think we do have the numbers here that I could pull up. But 2014, when there were 10 cases, only 3 of them, according to the epidemiologist I talked to last night, only 3 of the 10 could have been prevented by this vaccine. Only 3 of the 10 cases in the state. In 2015, only 1 of the 10 cases could have been prevented by this vaccine, according to the epidemiologist I talked to last night. 2016, of the 10 cases, only 3 could have been prevented. And we do not know how many of those deaths were of this group. As a matter of fact, of the last 14 deaths, we only know that 4 of them were of this serotype, of one of these 4 serotypes that this vaccine affects. Only 4 of them are known, 3 are unknown. So that's where we're setting on that. So I would argue that number 1, it's not so much about the mandate as it is the knowledge of the importance of it. And then number 2, we don't see that many cases in the Commonwealth of Virginia to be attended to. So I'm not certain. That's a great solution to a problem that does exist. I'm not certain how big it is. May I, Mr. Chairman, just introduce a person from National Vaccine Information Center who would like to speak. She's Vicki Hebsworth. She's a PhD. She has a PhD in public health and nursing. She's a registered nurse, university professor, former health policy analyst for Congress, served on 4 federal vaccine advisories with FDA, HHS, and the CDC itself, and for the last 10 years with NVIC. So, it's Vicki Hebsworth.
Welcome. Thanks for coming.
Good morning, Chairman O'Bannon and subcommittee members. As Mr. Martin said, my name is Vicki Hebsworth, and I'm a public health research scientist, registered nurse, and I'm a former congressional health policy analyst. And I am a volunteer and serve as the Director of Research and Patient Safety for the nonprofit charity National Vaccine Information Center, which is headquartered in Sterling, Virginia. NVIC was founded in 1982 to prevent vaccine injuries and deaths through public education and to defend the informed consent ethic and health policy and law. Today I'm testifying on behalf of more than 185,000 NVIC supporters living in Virginia and other states. As detailed in NVIC's referenced handouts in the folder we have provided, NVIC opposes HB 1533, which creates a meningococcal vaccine, specifically MCV4 mandate for all children attending the 6th grade in the Commonwealth. We oppose HB 1533 for 4 major reasons. First, invasive meningococcal disease naturally declined after peaking in the 1990s and is very rare in the U.S. and in Virginia. There were 550 cases of invasive meningococcal infections and 9 deaths reported in 2013 in the entire United States population of 315 million people. There were 433 cases and 10 deaths in 2014, with an infection rate of 0.14 per 100,000 persons. In Virginia, there were 20 meningococcal cases in 2014 and 15, and only 5 of those cases were in school-aged children 10 to 19 years old, who are the target of the vaccine mandate bill. Second, this disease is not easily transmitted in schools or other public settings. You cannot contract invasive meningococcal infections from casual contact with a person, such as breathing the air in the same room. You have to be highly susceptible, have regular, close, personal contact, such as exchange of saliva. Children and young adults naturally colonize meningococcal bacteria in their nasal passages without any symptoms. And as a result, 99.99% develop lifelong immunity. However, a tiny number of individuals with rare genotypes and certain biological or environmental risk factors, such as severe immune disorders or exposure to cigarette smoke, are extremely susceptible to invasive disease if they have close personal contact with a person actively colonizing meningococcal bacteria, and for them, the vaccine is highly recommended. Third, a meningococcal vaccine mandate will not be effective and will be expensive. There are at least 12 serotypes of meningococcal bacteria that cause disease. but the licensed MCV4 vaccine, federally recommended in 2005, only contains 4 strains and does not contain serogroup B or other strains that cause more than 60% of invasive cases of disease in the U.S. Vaccine-acquired immunity wears off in 2 to 5 years. So in 2011, the CDC recommended a second MCV4 booster dose for 16-year-olds. The 4-strain vaccine costs $78 to $115 per shot, and a mandate will make attending school more expensive for children and increase administrative costs for the Commonwealth. We also note that in 2015, the CDC declined to recommend a new meningococcal vaccine for the B strain for all children due to questions about effectiveness and high cost. And this is the strain that causes most of the disease. 4th, serious meningococcal vaccine reactions have been reported. More than 3,200 reactions and injuries, including deaths, following meningococcal vaccination have been filed with the Federal Vaccine Events Adverse Reporting System. The vaccine manufacturer package inserts list reported serious brain and immune system disorders, including convulsions and paralysis due to Guillain-Barré syndrome and Bell's palsy following meningococcal vaccination. In summary, invasive meningococcal infections and disease are extremely rare in the United States and in Virginia. The disease is not easily transmitted in a school or other public setting. The vaccine is expensive and only contains 4 of the many strains causing meningococcal disease and only confers temporary immunity that wears off and then requires a booster dose. And serious meningococcal vaccine reactions, injuries, and deaths have been reported. In addition, voluntary uptake of the vaccine has been rising in Virginia and other states. NVIC respectfully urges a no vote on HB 1533, recommending but not mandating this vaccine respects the informed consent principle and supports safe and cost-effective public health policies in the Commonwealth. Thank you for the opportunity to provide this testimony on behalf of NVIC and our Virginia supporters.
Thank you, ma'am. All right.
Good morning. Thank you for the opportunity to speak. My name is Deborah Hammer, and I am the president of Virginians for Medical Freedom. A member of my group and I had an opportunity to meet many of your staffers last week. And one of your staffers asked me, well, tell me the history of meningitis, what's the rates, and what before vaccines and after vaccines. And so we said, well, we're at an all-time low. And he goes, well, then it must be working. Let's keep it. And I said, what? Hold on 1 minute. Let's not be so sure. Now, and I'm going to just back up real quick. If we look at this chart, measles was gone 98% eradicated before the vaccine. You've got scarlet fever, typhoid, and the plague, which never had a vaccine, and we no longer have them. And so that information was gained from the CDC website, vital statistics, and it's displayed like this. Year starting 1900, here's 1960. The vaccine was introduced way down here. When you go to the CDC website on measles, it only displays the chart from 1950 to 2010. And then you go to the CDC website, because you're like, well, where do these diseases go? And the CDC website for history of drinking water treatment shows you that 40 state departments, health departments, came into being in the early 1900s. And then you have the influenza pandemic here. And here's where, in 1921, 22, where they, I'm sorry, 1908 is when they first started using disinfection of community drinking water. And they say, and then it went to spread across the United States, and they say, contributing to a dramatic decrease in disease across the country. So even the CDC admits that it's our water. Not only was it our water, it was our nutrition, it was plumbing, it was refrigeration, it was a bunch of other stuff. So now let's look at the history of pneumococcal. You got 1910 to 2010. And do you see these spikes? World War I, the Depression, World War II, the Vietnam War. Do you notice how small the spike is in Vietnam War? Well, we had all those infrastructures, public works, health, in place by then. So this here is the actual chart for where the vaccines for the meningitis was, brought into market. And now what I did is I went to see before and after the introduction for college students and for 11-year-olds. Now this is the strain that the vaccine covers. And like you've heard before, there's more than one strain. You can see there's a noticeable decline in the first two, a nominal decline in the other two strains, and a negligible decline before the introduction of the vaccines. Then we have to go to the Virginia Department of Health, and you see it, we already heard, how it's completely gone down, and you get an average of basically 14 people per year in Virginia who have this. And so the next substantive policy issue I have is this interferes with the doctor-patient relationship, because they're the ones, for the past couple of decades, they've had this thing called they've had personalized medicine come up, and this is where a doctor looks at your life situations. For instance, as we saw here, if you're in the military or dormitory, it's these types of places where you've got a problem with meningococcal disease.
Ma'am, I'm going to ask you to please
Wrap it up.
do this fairly quickly.
Okay, I will, promise. So they did a study when contextualized care was put into place. 40%, 71% of the cases had a good outcome, 29% of the cases had a bad outcome. And so, for that, personal medicine leads to lower healthcare costs, better relationship between the doctor and the patient, and a better outcome for the patient. And then I just want to go through just a few other policy issues with this.
We have about 1 minute left for your side.
All right. There's a 1986 Childhood Vaccine Injury Act where you can't sue the doctor, you cannot sue the manufacturer, you can't sue the nurse. In addition, this law states that they do not have to disclose known risks to the parents or the guardians, and the manufacturers, in addition, only have to provide relevant information to the doctors. Doctors do not get full disclosure. In 2011 Supreme Court case prevented, even protected manufacturers from faulty vaccines. And
that's 15 minutes for that side. So.
Okay, thank you.
Thank you so much. So Steve, if you have other folks maybe just want to come up briefly and identify themselves, I think that's fine.
John Hanks with the Virginians for Health Freedom, and we oppose this bill.
Thank you, Mr. Hanks. All right, Steve, you want to? Justin?
Julia Hill with Virginians for Religious Freedom. We oppose this bill.
Thank you, ma'am. All right, Steve, you want to sum up?
Only will say that running at a rate of 10 cases of all types of meningitis per year, of all age groups, only 10 a year, and only 1 to 3 per year identifiable as being in one of these serotypes.
Thank you. Delegate Hope, you want to wrap up before the committee takes some action?
I would just say, this is rare, but this is a very serious issue we're dealing with, and so I hope that, I appreciate the predicament that the subcommittee is in, but I think we got to take this very, very seriously, particularly knowing that the health department is discretionary in how it makes its decision, and so this is very serious.
All right, so there are no amendments to this bill, oddly enough.
Mr. Chairman.
Delegate Steckles.
Just wanted to ask the paper, the religious exemption that's in Virginia law stays in your...
That's correct. That's correct. All right.
Mr. Chairman, just a question for you. Just a question for you. There were so many factual differences between the two sides. I know we can stay for a long time when we can't, but personally, I would like to ask the medical community their opinion of some of the things that were stated. I don't know if we have time for that or not, but anyway, that's just what I'd like to do.
ask Dr. Sickles. I'm assuming that no one in here disputes the facts that were presented today, the numbers that were presented of cases, 3,200 reports of the injuries and so forth to the national database. But I'm assuming no one is disputing that, to try to be fair for Delegate Sickles. Mr. Chairman.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman.
Delegate Secretary.
One of the questions I had is, if we can look at someone's genotype and tell whether this drug would work, why don't we do that? Before we, and just mandate the vaccination for those that have the right genotype that would affect. And what about all the other, that's one question, what about the allegation this only covers one small, not one small, but one area of the disease? Yeah.
So your question is about the serotypes that cause the
No, well, the first question was, it only works in people with a certain genotype. That's the allegation that's been made.
So it protects against 4 subgroups, A, C, Y, and W135.
Let me just slow things down. This has nothing to do with your genotype. This has to do with the subtypes of
the
bacteria.
Okay. Well, Mr. Chairman, I thought that someone testified the fact that only people with certain genotypes this would affect, so you're disagreeing with that?
I think I'd like to clarify or respond to some of those comments. There are 13 different types of meningococci bacteria. Almost all the serious invasive meningococcal disease is caused by 5 of those 13 groupable types. Meningococcal vaccine, this vaccine protects against multiple strains of the disease, whereas colonization, someone that has the bacteria in the back of their nose or in their throat, only provides future protection against the strain that happens to be present in that person's nose or nasopharynx that's colonized in that particular individual. So if that helps clarify at all.
Okay, anybody else? Is there a motion? All right, there's a motion to report refer. Is that seconded? I'll second it. Okay. So, more discussion. All those in favor of reporting, recommending to the full committee to report and refer to appropriations, please raise your right hand. What's the count? All right, bill fails to report. Thank you. Thank you. All right, delegate, any notifications here?
Mr. Chairman, just if I may, just to give a little context, and I'll give her a little time to get it right. So this bill has transformed a lot, because unlike the workers' comp bill last year where there was one valley to make peace in, there was about 5 to make peace in with this bill. And until about late last night, we apparently finally got the last one to have peace. So the approach now with this bill is a telemedicine approach. The first draft you saw was really a scope of practice approach, and so we have drastically changed it. We had opticians who had to have a say, ophthalmologists, retailers to sell glasses. We had a company that is practicing online medicine that needed to weigh in, and the optometrists. So they have all done that, Mr. Chairman, and with that context, I think these line amendments get all parties across the finish line. And with that, Mr. Chairman, I'll let Sarah report the amendments, and then we can talk about exactly what the bill does after that.
All right. Sarah?
Okay, I've distributed the copies that I have for line amendments. The numbers are a little off, so I'm going to go through and correct those, but I wanted you to be able to see the longer edition. The first line amendment is on the end of line 15.
Okay, now, on the yellow sheet, amendment number 1 says line 14. You think that's really line 15?
It is line 15, sir.
All right, so members, if you'll take note of that, line 15.
At the end of that line, we will add that new language you see where we insert 1 that in the case of contact lenses, all information required by the Fairness to Contact Lens Consumer Act, 15 USC 76013710, comma 2, in the case of prescription eyeglasses, all information required by the ophthalmic practice rule, parens eyeglasses or eyeglass rule, close parens, comma 16 CFR chapter 1 part 456, authority 15 USC 57A 5 USC 552 parens and 3, and then continue on with line 16.
And Mr. Chair, just very briefly, I think probably good news when we want. What that does, I know it's long, but what it does is simple. It's just clarifying that we're tracking federal law. We just don't want to. We just want to make sure everyone was clear on the regs that we were tracking federal law and not interfering with the FTC.
Mr. Chairman?
Dr. Garrett?
So, Doug, I want to make sure that I didn't hear you or that neither one of us is right or wrong. The first one, Contact Lens Consumer Act under U.S. Code Section 7611 is federal code, but the second USC 57A and so forth is U.S. regs. Is that correct, sir?
Yes, I believe that's correct.
So,
Those are FTC regs.
Mr. Chair, I'll follow.
Yes, sir.
The Uber chair is very typically reticent to put a lot of federal regs into our Virginia code because the regs tend to have a life of their own, and there's a lot of lives that are moving to Washington as opposed to federal code. So, Sarah, is that going to create challenges? Perfect, thank you. Not trying to get in the way, Doug Barrel. I just want to make sure the Uber chair is going to be out.
Mr. Chair, I don't disagree, but sometimes extra clarification is needed to make people comfortable, to make sure they can keep practicing the way that they practice.
Thank you, Mr. Chair.
All right,
Okay, your
Sarah?
second amendment is not on the yellow sheet. It is going to be on line 25 of the substitute after the little a in parens. Strike all of that subdivision. The language reads, the patient has provided a medical history that is available for review by the provider, semicolon, strike the B. We'll have to renumber that paragraph there to make everything make sense. Your third amendment to the substitute is on line 31. Following prescription is not determined. Insert solely.
All right, now, what is the proper line number for the third amendment, line 31?
Yeah, Mr. Chairman, it is line 31. That is correct.
Not determined.
Solely.
Add
And the word solely after the word determined.
add solely.
Yes, sir.
Solely by, all right? Go ahead.
Then our next amendment, line 35, following C there, beginning this.
Line 35 is correct, not line 37, Mr. Chairman.
The new subsection here. We're going to strike all of the first 2 lines, and on line 37 of your substitute, strike requirements of this subsection. Then insert the requirements of this section. So that will read, requirements of this section shall not apply to.
Okay, everybody got that one?
Your final amendment is in subsection D. On line 42,
following July 1, 2017, you will strike the remainder of that subsection.
So do that again, on line 42 after,
After July 1, 2017,
uh-huh,
strike the remainder of that
the
subsection.
whole, all 32, 43, and 44.
Yes, sir. And Mr. Chairman, if I may, the last two amendments you just listened to really are, they address the same issue. And we just, those lines got a little murky as far as opticians. They didn't want to have to be the police of this section. They just want to be able to fill a prescription if somebody brought over a prescription. So we just did not want to hinder their ability to do that, so we had to get rid of those lines.
Committee is comfortable, we'll adopt those amendments in a block. Peter, why don't you tell us what the bill now does?
Mr. Chairman, and there are plenty of people that are, I'm sure, more than happy to explain that as well. So, Mr. Chairman, some states have approached this differently where online medicine is coming. You all know that. You all looked, a lot of it, what it does now is follow thematically a section you all did for a company called Teladoc a couple of years ago before I was on the health committee. We understand technology is coming. We understand people are using technology, telemedicine for telecommuting, for travel, and a lot of different avenues. So, but we do want to make sure that there is patient integrity, rules of the road, and that patients are getting good care that we have decided they need to get in the Commonwealth. So this bill tries to codify a lot of the telemedicine themes and practices you all looked at in the past, and also but allow technology to continue. I'd really like Mr. Keeney, I know is here, is on top of the optometrist, who, whether he likes it or not, has been with this bill from the beginning, to get into the nitty gritty what the bill now does, because they were working on it late last night. So I will allow him to talk, and then I know there are a lot of parties involved. You may want to get them as well.
All right, thank you. Mr. Keeney?
Chairman, appreciate it. Kelly, appreciate it. Bruce Keeney, representing the Virginia Alphabetical Association. In a nutshell, what we saw nationally in the alphabetical profession in Virginia is that there's a growth that I think everybody in healthcare should support and recommend encouragement development of is telemedicine. That's a great way to provide increased access to people, make it more convenient, sometimes more affordable. Our concern was, as we started seeing some issues raised about whether or not there was a doctor involved and whether or not it followed standard of care. What we have essentially done with this is that we've defined an ophthalmic prescription, which is the first aspect with what you're going to probably have to deal with down the road in telemedicine standards for all prescription devices and solutions and products. But eyeglasses and contact lenses do require a doctor's prescription. And what we've done with this is that we have tracked your existing telemedicine laws. There are some exceptions to that to accommodate some people. We feel that those exceptions have not jeopardized the commitment that there should be a doctor involved and an evidence of a doctor involved, since it does require prescription, and that standard of care be maintained. And that's essentially what we've accomplished with this.
All right, any members have any questions, comments? Anybody, public comment for or against?
And I think no one's coming up here to show you they're against it, which I think, and I know that there are a lot of people who are. So I'm happy. I know ophthalmology is here. I know the opticians are here. I know that the technology company is here. So if anyone has any questions, but I think you'll see that them not standing up is they no longer have concerns with the bill, and I think everybody agrees that we protected patient integrity as we could, but at the same time allow technology to continue.
Peter's the patient on the subcommittee. If the committee's desire to report this amended substitute, a motion would be in order.
Mr. Chairman, just before we do that, and Delegate Farrell, for the benefit of everybody here, so we spent a great deal of time dealing with this, but for a unique reason. The field of taking care of eyes used to be ophthalmologists, optometrists, and opticians. We are expanding that to add telemedicine, or physicians that practice from a distance.
Yes, sir.
And teletechnology, the concept of actually being able to work within the healthcare space technologically through the internet and so forth. So I applaud you, sir, for getting all 5 of those entities to somehow to get together. And going forward, that needs to be a model, Mr. Chairman, of how we deal with this, rather than everybody sort of trying to consume this process. It worked really well, but it took to the late hour to make that happen. I'm sure sure not everybody is happy. I see some folks that have some concerns still on their face. But at the end of the day, that's the process that needs to work, Mr. Chairman.
I think that's just fatigue, Mr. Chairman.
As the TV commercial says, it ain't pretty.
It ain't pretty.
No, it ain't pretty, but at the same time, we all know how technology is changing, but we do want to make sure that patients, there are to maintain some rules of the road, so it's not the Wild West. So I think we try to accomplish that. And we did not try to break revolution ground. We did try to look at what you all have done with telemedicine in other areas.
Thank you. Dr. P.
Mr. Chairman, thank you. Proud to be a co-patron. Thank you for bringing this idea. I know along the way in working with you, you mentioned that there were some, lawsuits or pending litigation in other states. Do you believe that this bill?
That actually is more tied to the particular state. In that bill, it was completely different.
This would not
This
have
is not
any
even
relationship.
approaching that. That's in South Carolina, which is a completely different bill. It actually tries to, that first draft would have had a problem, because what they did in South Carolina was really not only define how an optometrist does something, how an ophthalmologist does something, and it actually is a question of the South Carolina Constitution. We're not even doing what that bill did at all.
Great.
And it doesn't run afoul of any constitutional issues.
Thank you.
All right, move to report. Is there a second? Okay, there's a motion properly seconded to report House Bill 1497. All members in support of that, please raise your right hand. Jarrett's hand is up over there. Okay. Thank you very much. Thank you, Doug Farrell.
Thank you, sir.
Doug Murphy. I thought I saw it. Welcome. House Bill 2042.
House Bill 2042, we put in, Mr. Chairman, to see if we could help get more education out there about the serious problem of suicide. However, working with stakeholders, we've really come to recognize that there are some other ways to get this done, and so I move to strike the bill. I request that you strike the bill.
Right, or second?
Strike the bill. Okay, move to lay it on the table, sir.
That would be an appropriate motion. All in favor, please say aye. Aye.
Thank you.
Okay, I think we have two bills left. House Bill 1750 is not in it's my bill. It's not in conflict with the bills we passed before. It's a bill that's here at the request of the Virginia Pharmacists Association. It simply clarifies what a pharmacist may do. Mr. Pickford, would you briefly?
Yes, sir. Mr. Chairman, members of the committee, James Pickrell with the Virginia Pharmacists Association. This bill simply codifies the current executive order and would allow naloxone to be dispensed from a pharmacy under that standing order. Glad to answer any questions.
Any questions?
Second.
All right, all in favor, please raise your right hand. And with the exception of a bill that went by today and a new bill referred, the last bill is 2209, and there is a substitute. While that's being handed out, this bill relates to an emergency department care coordination program. This concept is that there's a way to get at the folks that are frequent flyers in the ER and get them some help either through care coordination or if there is a problem identified as far as medication use. This is generally modeled after other states where it has been very successful. I